Hey everybody, we're back on Bald Move Prestige with another movie. This time we're talking about 1994's action thriller, crime drama, Leon the Professional.
Uh-huh.
It's written and directed by one Luc Besson. It stars Jean Reno. I checked with a French person in chat before I went with that.
Okay.
Previously, I thought it was Jean Reno, but I don't. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
Gary Oldman and Natalie Portman. This is her debut performance. She was cast in this movie when she's 11. She starred in it when she was 12. Zero screen experience. It's a pretty incredible performance. Keeping all that in mind. I'd seen this movie in high school because around my junior high school year, I was palling around with a guy that went on to be a film student. So he's really up as that, and he was, this is a foreign action film that I had to see, and I quite liked it. I'd never seen anything like it before, and I've watched it a couple times since. I don't think I've seen this in about 10 years, until just yesterday. Jim, what about you? What's your experience with Leon the Professional, which of course was Leon in France? It was the Professional United States, and I guess it's now called Leon the Professional.
The fuck with the naming. Why? Just call it Leon the Professional. That's a perfectly good name. It's
a Harley Quinn situation. It took him a long time to find
yeah,
the title. Yeah.
So I had never seen this film actually. This is my first time watching it, and I had heard the reputation of this film as being uncomfortable with its relationship between Natalie Portman and the main protagonist, Jean Reno.
The fabulous Jean Reno, Godzilla's own Jean Reno,
whose name is obviously Leon. In this movie, I came away thinking, sort of surprised. Like, I think it's good. I don't think it's amazing. It's not like the best film of '94 or the best like assassin thriller film I've ever seen. It's good. It's very good. But it's not great. And the sexual component that everybody was talking about, this relationship, was far more understated than I expected, given its reputation. It's basically like a scene or maybe two, and they're pretty short, where all of that misplaced affection seems to be coming from the young girl's side, which makes a fair bit of sense. Jean Reno, I should stop saying it wrong intentionally. Leon seems to not be returning it in the exact same way. He's returning it more as a fatherly figure, or it seemed that way to me. Although I will say, I read a little bit about this film, and apparently in the original script and in the original film in France, there are a few more scenes like that, where maybe they're a little more overt.
Because I clearly, when I've seen conversations about this film take place, it's clear to me that they're arguing about the two different versions of the film. Like if you're talking about the original director's cut, it's kind of like I think his first cut, or might even be the definitive French cut. There is quite a few more scenes that are a little bit more explicit and kind of because I think this as it is, the American cut is almost an anti-Lolita film. Like, it's the tale of a young woman who's kind of playing house with a man who's got his own kind of problems and obliviousness to it, and him just steadfastly just ignoring all of that and kind of uncomfortable with it, but having, genuine feelings for this girl in the form of her like protector, father figure, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, I did read a version of the script where it was far more overt. They actually end up making love.
Right. Which, Jesus Christ, can you?
I can't even imagine.
I want to put a pin in this because there's more like you encapsulate perfectly kind of like the way I've always thought about the film as well. And then I want to kind of pin all that till the end because like the dude says in Big Lebowski, new shit has come to light since I've last thought about this. I want to kind of go over that. But let's talk about the film itself. You mentioned it's not amazing, and I kind of want to push back on that because the only, I guess, criticism I have is that, like, man, it is a little bit of a tightrope walk watching this film because the possibility that it goes off the rails and goes into a full-on Lolita thing, very uncomfortable, is just it seems like it's always there. There's like 3 or 4 scenes where it's kind of looming large, and you're like, Jesus Christ. Like, plus, like, a lot of things I think they do to diffuse that sexual tension, which seems to be things that Jean Reno kind of improvised or worked out with Luc Besson, because he's like, look, Luc, I don't know what you're going for here, but I don't want this kid giving me a lap dance, okay? Her parents are over there. They're looking really sketchy about the situation. So he decided to play Leon simple, like almost with a touch of Forrest Gump, to give that extra touch of like innocence and like, you know, not like he's not a man with like typical male urges. He doesn't understand that kind of thing. Like it's like very puzzling to him what's happening. And I think that was a smart choice to make him very socially and like you know, emotionally stunted. And it comes across, there's a couple things that where that works, but like I keep I'm getting sidetracked. Why isn't this a great movie? Because other than that kind of ambiguity that makes me uncomfortable, it's not a huge high budget movie, but I think this movie's use of especially light and shadow is fucking incredible.
Well, I'm comparing it to things from, like, I hear, okay, Luc Besson. And granted, this is his first American film, and I know he had done like the film Nikita before this. But I think of Fifth Element. I think of Lucy. I think of things where like the style is so unique and so like distinctive to Luc Besson that this did not impress me in that regard, because I've seen his later works, which blew me away. Like Fifth Element is iconic.
Do you think Fifth Element's a better movie than Leon the Professional, though?
I certainly enjoy it more, yeah.
Huh.
I mean, okay, and stylistically, yes, it's 1,000 times better than this. It has a fingerprint, it has an identity, whereas this feels like very much to me like many other sort of assassin thriller type things with maybe a little bit of a spin, like a quieter tone, perhaps.
I'm trying to think of maybe like if I feel differently is because I saw this earlier, and like a lot of the like spy thriller stuff that came later is, you know, kind of like stands on this movie's shoulders. Like La Femme Nikita and Leon the Professional are kind of revolutionary in this kind of genre in the same way that like The Matrix was. So it's like, you know, I always wonder, like 30 years on, like what do people think of The Matrix, right? So I don't know, because like I said, I think of this in terms of like some of the, you know, like the initial opening shot tracking down the street of New York and kind of swooping into this pizza parlor. The initial kind of like Batman-esque shootout that they have with Leon in the initial kind of like establishing his badass bona fides. The way he steps out of these inky black shadows and you just see his hand emerge with a knife around the guy's throat. Like that shit I think is really iconic. And the way they use light continue throughout the movie, like there's this scene with Leon and Matilda going over like the rules of cleaning in his apartment, and the sun is kind of like, you know, shining in and kind of making them both glow with a halo. And there's also the scene where Matilda first goes to his door for sanctuary, and the way like when the door opens and kind of the light from his apartment hits her face, like,
and it's similar to the end
heaven
when he's walking out of the building.
And like all that stuff kind of ties through with a visual motif. I feel, and the way that he shot all this in France, except for the exteriors that he did in like 6 Day in New York City to make this in New York, like I think some of that stuff is really cool from a filmmaking standpoint. And again, the performance you get out of Natalie Portman, I mean, Jean Reno is giving like a negative performance. He's just like a blank slate, and Gary Oldman is also giving some kind of performance in this movie. But Natalie Portman, I just can't like believe how well she plays this particularly world weary, damaged, you know, like really been beat down by life 12-year-old.
It isn't until the hotel scenes when they're checking into the hotel when she comes alive in this film for me. You know, her being a typical kid stuff and having this trauma and crying, trying to get into his apartment. That's all good stuff. But then her, you know, flipping the switch at that point when they're checking into the hotel and like becoming an entirely different person in the situation when she needs to be. That's what impressed me about her performance.
Yeah.
And the whole thing in general is just really good.
I also, before we get like too into spoiler section, I want to talk about more things I really like about this movie. To me, because I feel like I'm actually much more of a child of the 90s than the 80s, especially the 70s, because that's when I was a teenager and like I was really paying attention to style and music.
Yeah.
And man, the hair and suits on this show are so fucking 90s. It's amazing. Like every one of these goons is just off the rack JCPenney 1994 collection. Their hair is right out of whatever the Great Clip style guide is at the time. It's just mid 90s Palooza. The soundtrack, holy hell, is like, when did Goldeneye come out, before this movie or after this movie? Because it's nailing
After.
This kind
It's
of
95.
like industrial. Okay. Leon the Professional heavily influenced the soundtrack of Goldeneye.
Yeah.
Because this like industrial kind of like pipes gonging and banging together, that like industrial pneumatic kind of beat that it has driven. It's like it feels like the Stax music from Goldeneye.
Yeah. You're right.
I think it's really incredible. I'd never heard anything like that.
Yeah, I think my 2020 colored glasses that I'm wearing are keeping me from seeing how great this film would have been at the time. Because you know, when this comes out, I'm 12 years old. I'm probably not watching movies like this.
Right.
So yeah, I probably didn't have a lot of experience at the time with these. So I don't know what the genre was like at that point. But you're right. Like it definitely has. It certainly had to influence some of the GoldenEye stuff.
Yeah, and you're thinking like that. This is you had the badass 80s where you're like Schwarzenegger and Stallone were ruling everything, and like you still had that going, because I think this movie is kind of contemporaneous with like Demolition Man.
Yeah.
But when you compare this action movie, like there's been thinking people's action movies before, like the First Blood.
Sure.
That's actually a really good movie.
Yeah.
But it's also boring as fuck compared to like Rambo 2, blow the fuck out of everything, right?
Sure.
This is a blend of like this like kind of ultra realistic style, but still plenty of like heads exploding and you still got I think this body count's got like upper 30s people in it. It's like not too far off of a Schwarzenegger fit, but instead of like Jean Reno coming in here, no shirt, just rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat shooting from the hip, like there is I don't know whether they're like choreographing stuff to look good, or they actually had some people starting to come in and give advice on things. But I just felt like the gunplay, it's not super realistic, because Jean Reno's cleaner is kind of like a Batman character. I don't think he strictly obeys the rules of time and space. He's able to kind of teleport places here and there.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like a step in the way from Rambo and Commando and into Jason Bourne. Like this is kind of like that missing link, between between the two species. So you might be right on that, because like I said, when I was watching this stuff, like I'd seen over the top action violence, but I'd never seen, what is this, under the top, under the table
Sure.
action
over
violence.
the bottom.
Yeah. But it still had a lot of like unintentional, like there's out of place comedy. Like there's scenes of there's this really funny scene of these guys in like these baklavas just shitting their pants in terror, having to face this guy, this Leon the Professional, and the way their eyes are bugging and their lips are pursed and they're like puffing with it looks like what's that, the Kung Pao entered a fist, the guy's eyes and mouth on the tongue, or the angry orange.
Sure.
It gives that kind of like look to it, and I thought that was like side-splittingly hilarious. The whole sequence.
I'm trying to think, did I find anything funny in this film? And there are moments with like Gary Oldman that
the guys
like are so over the top that maybe I didn't notice it, but yeah, that sounds weird. I don't know. It's like a couple of moments with Gary Oldman, and maybe like the milk thing is puzzling to me, like hilariously puzzling to me, but we can talk about that here in a minute.
And I think it's got one of the more like It's got some really clever ideas, like the way he gets out of some of these jams. I had never seen that. Like, it's been since copied many times, but I'd never seen some of the ways he's getting in and out of those jams. And then I thought the way the movie resolves was really good too. But it's you said it's like a good but not great movie. To that end, like Roger Ebert gave it 2.5 stars, which is not great by his standards.
Good but not great, yeah.
And I think he, this movie's relationship with Natalie Portman and her being 12 years old probably robbed it of a full another star, because throughout his review he's just like, yeah, I see it doing this and it's really effective and it's really pulling me in here, but like every 5 minutes I'm like, Jesus Christ, she's 12. Movie. Is anyone going to sit here and say that?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I've seen two. I've probably seen. I want to say more movies with inappropriate depictions of underage sexuality than I have, like, at that time, than I had like these type of spy thrillers or assassin stealth action movies. Like, I'm thinking of movies like Kids, the uncomfortable stuff that's like
sure
borderline nobody should watch.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
So maybe I was a little more accustomed to that, Mr. Ebert. But Roger Ebert's seen a million films. He's seen this. He's seen worse than this. That's strange to me that he picked up on that. Although I will say I'm happy being in the company, in such good company, with a 2.5-star rating from Mr. Ebert.
Yeah. And he even, like you said, he got on the whole that this is very much Jodie Foster and Taxi Driver.
I had seen that at the time, yeah.
Right, and I thought you were going to say there's almost more movies depicting inappropriate sexual like dynamics amongst like young people than there are, and I'm like, oh no, that might be true. There's very few movies that try to grapple in any kind of intelligent way with like sexuality among young people, period. Which is a thing that happens, but like it's radioactive, so nobody tries to show something that's like healthy, I guess, unless it's like ultra chaste, like, oh, you want to show a boy and girl's first kiss. Right. Sure. You want to, or it's like safe, like, oh, the 17 and 18-year-olds in Hunger Games are going to finally bone after 4 movies. Okay. Yeah, that probably happens.
And then you add an adult into the mix, right? And then the number is cut by 90%. Yeah. Like, no movie goes here. Very few.
Right. That wants to deal with the actual way these relationships go. So, but like I said, there's a lot here that I think is interesting and holds up really well.
Yeah, I mean, you're selling me. I think it might be better than I give it credit for, given when it was made.
Do you want to talk about? I kind of want to get in a deep dive and begin our analysis of the characters. With the first one, Jean Reno's amazing Leon. Again, I can't say enough about how well this movie establishes just what a badass this guy is. In like the first act of this movie, this him taking down this hotel full of dudes, and a very Batman. This is the first time Batman comes out to play in Batman Begins. Like, he's just kind of moving from shadow to shadow. You don't see him. Dudes come flying off the screen. You just hear screaming and gunfire and people being dragged off to darkness. And the way they do the spatial work, where, like I said, I don't know how you light to get at this, to where you've got obviously Jean Reno standing behind this guy in a closet or something, but you don't see him, and you just first see the point of that knife. It's like something out of Aliens, Mm-hmm. And I know how Ridley Scott got those shots. He like fucking wet down the entire set with black ink, and had the paint on the alien's costume wasn't even dry, and he's filming with strobe lights. How do you get this warm pre-Raphaelite scene and have this guy step out of his inky shadow 1 inch at a time and have the camera capture it? It's fucking incredible.
High contrast shot.
Yeah.
He's maybe my favorite line of the movie, even though Gary Oldman is really chewing that scenery later, is somebody's coming up, somebody's serious. Mm-hmm. Like, it's both a kind of a stupid, silly line, but it also conveys like their terror. And I don't know if they have heard of this guy, like if Leon is a known quantity at that point by the criminal underworld, and if Leon's after you, you're fucked, kind of like a Batman thing, or if he I don't know. It's his guy, his henchman tells him somebody's coming up, somebody serious, and like,
Yeah, what does he look like? Someone serious.
yeah.
There is a hint that Gary Oldman's character, the Stansfield rather, has been using Leon to do all of his hits. Like there's this implication that he's been subcontracting out to the Leon's handler, and he's slowly realizing, oh, this is the guy who I've used to liquidate all these other goons, which is why he takes them like so serious once he realizes who it is.
And knows exactly where to go.
Yeah, exactly.
To find him.
What do we make of this guy though? Like, when I was watching this movie, I was thinking, because I didn't, I was going into this kind of still as a fan. I hadn't done any real research, and I was thinking, is this guy like just very meticulous and Spartan, or is he actually simple? There's something wrong with him. Either like it's something kind of learned helplessness, or he's actually got some kind of limitation in some way. I think by the time I made it through the film, I had concluded that no, he actually is a little bit like somewhere on the Lenny of Mice and Men, Forrest Gump from Forrest Gump spectrum.
Yeah.
And he's being taken advantage of by many, many people at the start of this film.
And he's also seems emotionally repressed. And it helps also that they have made him an immigrant, right? Who doesn't necessarily speak the language very well, who doesn't know how to get by in this new society.
It's like a baby in the box situation from this week's Fargo.
Yeah. He's over here kind of just winging it. And he's sort of at the mercy of the people who are helping him. And that was a interesting relationship with the mob boss that maybe we should talk about here in a second. But yeah, I get the impression that maybe he's a little simple, though not overly so. I think he understands, the emotional stuff that's going on with the kid, and also how inappropriate it would be. And he's very competent at what he's doing. Like he is also a meticulous assassin, right? Like he has everything just so. You can tell by the box he carries and the way it's laid out that he takes his stuff very seriously, and he's very good at it.
There's a couple things that I think point to maybe a little bit more profound disassociation, like the pig game he plays with Matilda when he first gets her in her. Like, to me, that read as a person who just has no idea how to relate to a child. Like, if she was 16, he would have done that. If she was 6-year-old, he would. It's like his mind processes she's a child. What do children like? It's also funny that I guess he has that oven mitt just hanging out in his kitchen too. Yeah. Like Leon, it tells you something about I don't know. There's a little cute touches in his apartment. Like he lives such a Spartan lifestyle. He sleeps in a corner standing up. Or not sitting up, but he has like, little stitches and embroideries hanging up, and he's got this pig glove that he's able to make oints. But I don't know. I felt like that, to me, a lot of the way he kind of locks down when she tries to, to do her little childish attempts at seducing him and whatnot is like the way he would act if a mature woman, like if an age appropriate woman started coming on to him, he would also kind of like lock up and like, I don't know, I'm uncomfortable, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
And I feel like that does, in a way, make it a little less. I don't know. It definitely de-awkwardfies the situation for me, at least. So
it doesn't seem as exploitative, I guess, when you look at it that way, right?
Yeah, and I wonder where he came up with his rules. Like no women, no kids, cleaner rules. Like were those given to him by his handler, or did he come up with them on his own?
I mean, I have so many questions about Leon. That's one of them. And some of the questions I was surprised pleasantly that the movie deals with. Like when you're talking about his Spartan lifestyle, I'm like, man, this is an assassin. Every assassin movie I've seen, they are well paid for their work. And yet he's living in this shitty apartment in New York somewhere. He doesn't have any real possessions other than this bag of guns and this house plant. What is he spending his money on? Where is all this money that he should have as an assassin? The movie goes into that by the end, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, and you get this kind of like sinking feeling like, oh, this guy's taking advantage of him. And then at the end of the film, when he, essentially kicks Matilda out with nothing, you realize that, like, I don't know, he's not been holding on to this money at all. Like, if Leon wanted to cash out even 10% of his savings, this guy, he don't got it. He's been spending this on the whole time. Like, he's counting on the fact that Leon is never going to, wisen up, that he's just got him trapped in this situation where he's utterly dependent on him for everything. He's an outlaw. He's like, all I got to do, it's like he's got to worry about old Tony. Old Tony's not, the guy can't read. And I think that, that's a situation, like, if you cared about a guy, you could teach him to read, so he could go and participate in society, but that's not what you want, right?
And then he tries the same trick on Matilda, which, she's too sharp for that. She understands what's going on, I think. She
understands, which kind of embarrasses him. And there's, but there's like, again, what kind of guy this is. He's like, well, no women, no kids, but there's this fucking startling scene in the middle of the movie where he's sleeping, he's sitting there in his corner chair at night. It's the middle of the night. He just gets up and takes a walk over to Natalie Portman and puts a gun right to her head. Like, he has done some kind of moral calculus where it's like, well, I don't kill women and children, but also I have no blueprint for this. So
yeah. And would it cause her more pain to live through this experience for the rest of her life, or just end it right now, I think is what's going through his head. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I look at that, and then the way that, like, Tony is able to just, like, turn him around in circles when he just asks him about the money. Like, you get the feeling like, man, Leon's never going to ask about his money again, because this guy just made him feel so bad without even really trying to.
Yeah.
It's just a really interesting character, and the tension between, like, what we don't know and know about his character, I think makes the tension of Natalie Portman's character work really well, at least in the U.S. edition. Do you want to move on to talking about Matilda a little bit?
No. We have not addressed the big white elephant in the room, the milk. The fuck is going on with the amount of milk this man drinks, and then forces upon this young girl when she says, oh, I want to be a cleaner too. All right, well, first job is drink 3 quarts of milk. Like, what is it? I have no idea what they're getting at with this. No idea.
Super bones? I mean, I think the
Batman probably has super bones. You're right.
Trying to grow super bones, you need that calcium to break the microfractures you're going to get in training to be a cleaner.
The hell?
I think it's just another unfortunate, like, emphasis on his childlike quality. Like, what does a cool hitman do in the movies? Cool hitman, he smokes and he drinks and he womanizes.
Mm-hmm.
And this hitman does not smoke, does not swear, drinks milk, has this otherwise kind of wholesome, keep to himself, devotes time to his plants, goes and sees, Gene Kelly movies. He's got this, like, all this childlike wonder, like even a real, like, if I sat my 13-year-old down to watch Singing in the Rain or something, he'd bitch and moan the whole time about, oh my God, it's an old movie, and why are they singing and dancing? Oh my God, this is so stupid. Yeah. He's like this like character that doesn't really exist. And he's carefully constructed to kind of steer the ship between the massive icebergs they're going through with this, kind of like Hitman Lolita thing that they're flirting with. That's my take on the milk. It's just another innocence signifier.
Okay. It's everywhere in this film, which is just like that seems too much for just like a thing that they want to say about his character when they're saying it in other ways as well.
It's almost more appropriate for a Westworld plot, right? Like, if he's drinking all this milk and it turns out he's a cyborg hitman,
For sure.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah, I get it. And this is a real girl. He's trying to convert her to a side. Who knows? Yeah.
Does Luc Besson have a thing for milk? Doesn't Gary Oldman's character in Fifth Element drink milk? Am I misremembering that?
I don't know. He drinks a glass of water with a cherry in it, which ends up almost killing him. But that's the only time I can think of him drinking in the movie.
I thought maybe it was milk, but yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. Are we ready to talk about Matilda now, or do we need to talk some more? Okay.
I mean, I would just sit here and say why about the milk all day, but yes, let's move on to Matilda.
I think Matilda is a great character, and it's interesting, and she's so effortlessly like, you just take Natalie Portman, you dress her up in this particular way, you sit her have her legs dangling through the staircase, smoking a cigarette, and then just listening to the screams coming out of her apartment, and you get a particular opinion of like what her whole deal is. And that takes like 30 seconds, and then they just keep on layering things on top. Like, she's the type of girl that lives in this building where like drug deals are being openly talked about, and you see this particularly inept drug dealer and him trying to like steal 1/10 of a kilo, like they all fucking do. Like, oh, I don't know, I just held on to this stuff. I don't know what happened. It stepped. I don't know. And you then realize, oh God, that's not just any old inept drug dealer. That's her father.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, like, because you have all these, like, you know, where the fuck did she get this black eye? And then he smacks her right when you're like, okay, everything kind of clicks into place. And it's very efficient how they introduce, like, her awful family, like everybody, like her older sister is a shit. Her mom is like, I don't even know, putting up with this terrible,
I mean,
inept drug dealer guy.
Her older sister is a shit in the way that like the Goonies had a shitty older brother, or like Weird
True.
Science has a shitty older brother. It's not over the top.
No,
it kind of feels
but
like kids being shitty, but yeah.
Yeah, and they're also being molded in a very particular way. You know, they care about these particular things, and I just thought that was really effective. And they introduce her as kind of like this mashup of Cinderella and Anne of Green Gables, right? Because she's got this highly romanticized view of life and her role in it as a child, but she's also, you know, saddled with raising her younger brother and, like, you know, shielding him from all the insanity of her family. I thought that the way they introduced this, it took all 5 minutes, was really efficient, and worked really well.
Yeah,
you know, the way she connects with Leon when she asked him, you know, is it always like this? Like, you know, or is it just like this when you're a kid? And he's like, no, it's always like this. Like, there's simpatico, because like you kind of think that, you know, 30 years ago, this was Leon, you know, over in Italy or coming across the boat, and he knows, like, hey, it's not going to get any easier. If you're lucky, you'll have a houseplant to love. But they also show how smart her character is, because she gets sent on a milk run, ironically enough, while her entire family is assassinated by Gary Oldman's insane DEA outfit. And she's got the presence to, like, she understands that, like, oh God, I'm in danger too. I'm going to walk past and knock on this other guy's door and kind of like rely on him being on the ball and knowing what's happening. And I love the struggle of, like, you know, Leon's like, Jesus Christ, am I actually going to do this? Yeah.
And no, that's a good scene.
And like, yeah. And like Natalie Portman has to carry this whole fucking thing. She said in the interview, I don't know if this is true, but this is what she said, that like she at 12 years old had trouble crying on command. So Luc Besson sprayed mint oil into her eyes.
Jesus.
And so then she just like nonstop producing tears. I guess it stung. It was a terrible experience. And she said throughout the rest of the filming, anytime she needed to cry, she just thought about getting sprayed in the eyes with the mint, and the memory of that made her tear. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Luc Besson.
Wow.
You gotta, like, oh, you have trouble with the tears? Come here, mon chéri. It just mace you. Mace you. Oh, the tears come easy now. Like, Jesus Christ, dude. This is some maniacal shit. This is some maybe Gary no, it wouldn't be. It was who's the guy that they got dropped in the first Die Hard? Oh, Alan Rickman. In a story that they actually had his safety harness, and they actually dropped him before they told him he was going to get that genuine look of terror. Like, holy fuck. Don't give these people time to actually act. Just spray their eyes with mint oil.
I mean, it surprises me that Hollywood, after 100+ years of doing this, doesn't have like a solution that they can employ, right? Like,
yeah,
like he's got to go down to the corner store, buy Banaka, and then spray it in her eyes.
Right.
That's ridiculous. You don't have a tear serum for these actors? Like, oh,
or,
you know, I'm
like,
just not feeling
drops?
it today. Hit me with the teardrops. Like,
yeah.
Just
Every time I put eye drops that are perfectly comfortable and safe to use in my eyes, and I'm in front of the mirror, I always think like, "Oh man, I'm about to perform an Academy Award-winning performance because I look like I'm about on the like."
that every director has to make this up for themselves is ridiculous.
I have these 2 lemon wedges. Now open your eyes. You know, it's like, come on.
I like to put it on the basil leaves and rub it in. Yeah, it's the fuck. What are we doing, Hollywood?
But that scene only works because like she can hit those highs and lows. Like she's got this like where she's like, God, I'm gonna die. Please open the door. They're going to kill me. The guy starts seeing an interest. Like, oh my God, maybe this is something I need to pay attention to. Starts moving that direction. And then when the door opens and like she's able to instantly turn that into like a flood of relief. Like, oh my God, my life is being saved.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly complex performance. And like I don't know if Luc Besson is that good a director or she just was that fucking good because I just remember
she is great.
Oh no, and I remember like there was a lot of talk when the prequels came out that like maybe Natalie Portman and Jake Lloyd were ruining the movie. I didn't know much about Jake Lloyd, but I was like I had been on the ground floor with Natalie Portman. I'd seen 2 or and I'm like, look, I don't know how you can look at the professional and then say Natalie Portman can't act. Did she lose acting ability in the last 4 or 5 years? Did she reach the height of her acting potential at the ripe age of 12? Like, or is this the performance that George Lucas wanted? Which it turns out, he was going for something. It didn't work.
No,
but he was going for it.
Yeah. And it's important to, I guess, because I don't know why, but my memory of Natalie Portman's career is very hazy. I don't know that I really even knew who she was until Star Wars.
Like after Star Wars, she took like 6 years to go to get a doctorate or 2 in college, and she didn't do shit. You know, like I feel like there's that. Like she didn't want to just be a working actor, right? She wanted to do the things she wanted to do, and the early roles guaranteed that.
Well, that's the thing. The early roles were there, but they were probably more minor than this. Like I'm looking at some of the other movies she did between this and 5 years later, Star Wars Episode 1, Heat, which she's a very small part of. Yeah. Mars Attacks. I've actually never seen Mars Attacks, believe it or not.
I've only seen it once, and I think she's the president's daughter. But yeah,
okay,
it's a minor role. But
it was 2 years after this, so she's still pretty young. Minor role, like you said, and then Star Wars. Like she did a couple of other, in my opinion, no-name movies. Everyone Says I Love You and Beautiful Girls, also, but she's not really known for those either. So Star Wars was kind of my introduction to her as an actor, and I was not impressed by what I saw on the screen in Star Wars. How could I be? But then I saw stuff like V for Vendetta. She's done a lot recently. She's, I guess, in Zoolander playing herself. I don't remember that scene, but she's in Cold Mountain, which I saw, which I liked. Just, her catalog has gotten so much better. Black Swan, I saw, I guess, back in 2010 when it came out.
Yeah, we're doing a little pre-podcast debate about like what is her best performance, and it's like I always think of like she's good in that. She's really good in Closer.
I mean, V for Vendetta is
she's really good in V for
strong.
Vendetta. She's really good in Jackie. There's a lot. I haven't seen, like I said, Lucy in the Sky of Diamonds, which is her, it's her team up with Noah Hawley, which everyone hated. But I haven't seen that. But yeah, no, she's really good, and she's good in a lot of different ways too. She's really good at like big iconic stuff. She's really good at like quiet, like everyday. She's got a lot of range, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But it's like that stuff is definitely works. Like if this, you think about like if this was just a B average kind of child actor, a lot of this movie doesn't work. Like Luc Besson got really lucky that he got a person that could handle the material that he was pitching at them. And that's, like you buy it when that she's got this nothing to lose attitude, because when Leon says you can't clean, you can't even hold a gun, and she just grabs his gun, goes through the window, and just starts randomly blasting at people, that's another kind of like the comedic moments of them doing their apartment exodus when she's done some massively transgressive behavior.
Yeah.
But you're like, okay, well, this is a woman. It's like, what does she have to lose? She's lost her whole family. She's 12 years old. She's got this insane romantic view of the world.
She's been kicked out of school.
She's got that, like the vengeance and like winning the approval of this person who is her guardian is like the only things that she can think about. And she's got, she's utterly fearless within that performance envelope. Mm-hmm. I really like the paintball missions. Like I remember the first time I watched that, I'm like, oh God, he's actually going to he's picked out some slime ball for her to assassinate, and this is just going to happen. But no, it's just the paintball stuff. The forced milk drinking. That's very, the whole them working, that whole montage of her. It's funny because I thought it was going to lead up to her being an assassin. And I remember the first time watching, like, maybe she will be able to take out Gary Oldman, or she'll be able to take out a few goons and then he'll take her hostage. But all that stuff worked because I thought that this Natalie Portman was literally capable of anything. Good, bad, or ugly. But she also does she's also extremely immature. Like I never got in my watching that she was wanting to have a love affair with Leon. What she wanted to do is be a grown up. She's essentially playing house with this guy. She's going shopping. She's doing the chores. And part of what she sees in her worldview is part of that involves a romantic connection that she doesn't fully understand.
Yeah.
And like I said, I thought all that worked and made sense for this particular girl character.
I do too. And I think it was certainly for the American market a smart idea to pull out some of this, the further scenes of the sexual relationship between them.
The stuff that remains where she, apropos of nothing, goes and tells the hotel worker that, she's this guy's lover. Mm-hmm. When she does kind of like the over-the-top sexual stuff with Madonna and Marilyn Manson. But it's all mixed up also with like Charlie Chaplin.
Marilyn Manson does over-the-top sexual stuff too, but it's different. It's real different.
Yeah. But also Natalie Portman's Marilyn Manson.
She's great.
You don't want to miss it. It's worth seeing the movie just for that alone.
Oh, the contact
But
lenses,
then it goes to Charlie Chaplin, and like it's like ultra innocent.
Yeah.
It's like
she doesn't know what she's doing, right? With the Madonna and Marilyn. I almost said Marilyn Manson too. Marilyn Monroe stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it's also just weird because I felt like there's some kind of commonality between the gun incident and her telling the hotel manager that she's being, sexually exploited. It was both like these reckless acts to either to get to get Leon to take her seriously. Mm-hmm. First as an assassin, and then I guess as a woman or a person, or like that she was mad that he left her alone. I think when he had to do a job instead of taking her with. I don't know. Do you want to talk? I guess the third leg of this crazy performance trio, the negative particle to Natalie Portman's positive one is Gary Oldman playing this DEA agent, I think, or maybe he's just in a narco unit in the city.
He's the literal lie sniffer.
Yeah.
He goes up and he sniffs the lies right out of you.
It's an iconic performance, and I love it. What I've learned is that a lot of it was improvised. Like the Gary Oldman, I guess that thing about, you're a Beethoven fan. Like, I guess he did 4 or 5 different takes, all with a different musical genius that he just improvised the dialogue for. That take where he sniffs the other guy was like the first take, and no one talked about that being part of a literal lie sniffer, that he was going to get that close and start sniffing him. A lot of that stuff was very improvisational, which was surprised me because I thought this was a very meticulously assembled film, and it turns out a lot of the stuff was found. Like Jean Reno's turn. Like, for example, he refused to rehearse the scene between him and Natalie Portman where she's dressing up for him. Mm-hmm. He's like, this is a fucked scene. This is like the beginning of this movie's perversion. I want this to feel as awkward as it should be.
Yeah, don't want to get comfortable in that moment.
Exactly. Like, this should feel very comfortable and uncomfortable and weird for me.
And it comes across, he's like kind of half turning away, right? Like he doesn't even want to look at it.
Yeah, I don't want to be grappling with this. But like, I thought it's weird because some of the stuff like Gary Oldman was just trying to go for, like this guy's shtick is he listens to music and he takes some weird drug before he does all this stuff.
I was gonna ask you what you think that drug is.
I thought it's kind of meth, right? Doesn't
but
it
in
seem
pill
like that
form,
kinda...
I can't imagine that chewing
gel
meth
cap?
would have much of any effect, especially
Yeah.
instantaneous. But I don't know.
But he's just over the top, and you see the seeds of like his Emmanuel Zorg from The Fifth Element here, because he's got this like this crazy little Kermit voice he slips into when he's like, I love Mozart, and I don't know, the fact that he like empties his revolver in a guy he's annoyed with and goes to reload the revolver to like keep shooting him. The guy's like, you got to calm down. It's like, I am calm. This guy just like he ruined my suit. You don't understand. He steals balls from children. It's just he and I guess his classic line to everyone, like, this is the biggest meme out of the movie, where Gary Oldman there, he's asking for police backup, and they're like, what units? And he's like, bring me everyone. I guess he had done like 20 different takes, and then that was like he just doing like a break tension, try to get Luc Besson to laugh take. And that's the one that gets used. Yeah,
I read that like he had done the normal voice, bring me everyone or whatever. And then he told the sound guy, like, take your headphones off. Just slip your headphones off. I'm gonna go for something. And then he shouted it as loud as he could.
I'm gonna spike this VX meter. Just take your ears off.
And they used that
about
one
to hit the hull.
But yeah, I don't know. It's great. It's so over the top and ridiculous of a performance, but I think it works. But it wouldn't work if Gary Oldman was even 10% less serious about this role.
He has to commit, and it works in a way that I don't think Zorg quite does. Like, Zorg feels much more of a performance. Like, hey, I really like what you did with this guy. And that was because that's the thing is, like, I keep thinking, like, if Luc Besson makes the movie he wants to make, coming up day one, he's run out of the business. You can't make a full-on unironic Lolita action flick.
Oh, okay.
And all that stuff, and it's just not. It's not going to work, man. Like, several people teamed up to kind of save the movie, and I think Gary Oldman is one of them.
Yeah, that's the thing about this performance, though. Like, it is over the top, but it is just over the top enough to make you believe that this guy is unhinged, and that he's dangerous. But if you put Zorg in this movie, it would be ridiculous, right? Like, each character has its place in each of these movies, and I think Zorg in Fifth Element is incredible. It's great. It's perfect. It's exactly what Gary Oldman needed to be. In this movie, you couldn't swap these characters and even have. I mean, they would be laughed out of each of these respective movies, right?
Yeah, I think. Although I'm trying to, like, is it just a dress and well,
you can swap their clothes and their hairstyles, and I still think like the tone of those characters is perfect for the tone of each of these films.
I agree, and like I said, like, I think this is the thing the movie needed, like this unhinged. Because like the thing is like the way this works for me, and it doesn't, like, some of the things happening in like Fargo with the Gaetano character are not working for me. If you're watching these things contemporaneously, is because I'm at the end of this guy's story, right? Like, this guy has probably been doing this racket for a decade, and he probably wasn't on the drugs to begin with, but you're untouchable, and you have this much power for so long. You start getting into the nose powder, you start getting into the, I don't know, the liquid gel cap, meth tabs, whatever. Whatever you're getting into, you start murdering kids. Like, even his own squad people are like, Jesus Christ, you're off the rails this time, boss.
Even he is. Like, there's a line in there where there's like self-loathing coming through. Like, Matilda is confronting him in the bathroom, right? And he outfoxes her, and he takes this pill, and he's like, what miserable piece of shit have I done now? Like, you get the impression that somewhere along the way, like you're talking about, he's gone too far even for himself, and that these pills are almost a way to cope with that. And then that they feed back in, right?
Yeah, and like internal affairs are starting to sniff around him. Like, you can't defend this shit. So like, it's not like this guy is just in the middle of a successful, like, this is late stage, this is third act Scorsese stuff. This is off the rails. train wreck kind of thing. So like it works for me. Like this is an insane beast that's going to take people down as it's going through its death throes, but he's already, and I thought particularly the last act of this movie, I thought the shootout is really, I mean, it doesn't necessarily connect because, Leon literally is like apparently a vampire. He can levitate, he can get out of dead ends.
Well, he's been doing a lot of sit-ups, man.
That's true. He has been doing those full setups. So they did earn that. But it looks cool and it looks stylish. And honestly, the movie zigs when you think he's going to have this like spectacular shootout, and then it just goes cerebral, and he does the whole thing where he fakes being one of the first wave of guys that's been cut down, and I thought that stuff really worked. I remember the first time I seen this thinking like this is the smartest fucking thing I've ever seen. And
I thought they were going to be dumber too.
I thought it was going to go. I was looking for Commando when he screams and goes like, "Oh!" I'm like, "Oh, this is the thing. He's going to pull down that fucking fold up bed. It's going to have a panel with all these machine guns and grenade launchers." And the movie completely shifts in another gear. And I just remember, like, I was like, I don't know, 16, 17, watching this movie, my head exploding. And it felt like, because usually they shoot their way out, and it's like, okay, it's cheesy, it's unearned. I'm like, I'm looking forward to the happy ending. The fucking movie ended it. And it denies you anyway.
Yeah, no, there were a couple of ways this could have gone horribly wrong. Like you said, the shootout, maybe he's like drinking milk as he's like shooting guns and he's getting shot and the milk's spurting out of him.
Popeye's spinach, he's
right.
He's got that whole vitamin D milk pumping through his veins.
You could have done that, or the other way that I thought it was going to go is when he puts on this gas mask and he's trying to get out, like faking being one of them. I thought the movie was going to let that be a mystery longer, right? Like, because when they first show it to us, they don't tell us that it's him, really. They just kind of like have this guy being pulled out of the thing, right? Like his hand comes up and they're like, oh shit, we got a live one. They bring him out. We don't see any of that, but the movie seems to let you in on that secret almost immediately. There isn't a lot of question of who is this guy? Why do I care about him?
There's like a 5-second period of I wonder what's going on. Oh, yeah.
And then progressively it lets the other characters in on it, right? Like Gary Oldman sees him with his mask off, knows who it is. I think it played that ending really smart. And then the final moment with Leon with the grenade, I think is really well done.
So the first time I saw this movie, I was thinking like, well, maybe it's going to be a Braveheart ending because I just seen that movie, and I think that was the first adult movie I'd seen that like just nakedly subverted the good guy wins and the bad guy, and they tacked on a little bit of like, well, but he might have inspired change in the long run, but yeah, he got his guts pulled out and burnt in front of his own fucking eyes. That was not a good way to die. With all of his chief lieutenants in the crowd watching the defeat. So when I was thinking like, oh God, this is that kind of movie. But they kind of bring get a feel good ending out of it by him grenading him, and then showing that Matilda, instead of like going all in on the cleaning lifestyle, appears to want to go back to her school that she got kicked out of. Yeah. I don't know, like long term, I don't know how that works out. Because her dad paid for a year up front, and then what you going to do the year after that?
Try and get money from Tony? That's not going to work.
Right, because he just, like, that's the thing. At first you think, oh, well, maybe he is going to take care of her. But then he gives her $100 and says, I don't want to hear you back in a week. And then, like, there's that it keeps on getting worse and worse to where it's like, no, she's never going to be able to come back here again. And then like I noticed that she buries like this potted plant, and that doesn't look like an evergreen, and it's in New York State. Maybe you're supposed to understand that this is like a false happy ending. That this is because I guess that Besson had planned a sequel to this called Matilda, which is going to pick her up, that he was going to wait for Natalie Portman to get another 10 years older and then shoot a sequel to where she is a diehard cleaner. So, like, that's not a happy ending for her, I don't think. That means she never escapes this lifestyle. She never got the normalcy that Leon is hoping to provide to her. But I don't know.
Yeah, because I don't think Leon is particularly happy or having a great life at the beginning of this film, right? So to see her go into that lifestyle is a loss.
He specifically says, you've given me a taste for life. Like Leon very much felt like a guy who was just waiting to die. Like he was just like, he is a houseplant, and he needed a bare minimum of care that Tony provided to him, and that he needed a little bit of light and shade and pH in a soil, and that's it. But I thought the ending was pretty bittersweet, taken on the whole. Now, I want to talk about the other elephant in the room. So I said all these things about how I thought about the complicated but ultimately okay relationship that I think Leon has with Matilda in this film, because ultimately she's doing things that I think they're not trying to say that Matilda's a healthy child, with a healthy psychological understanding, healthy family dynamics. I think she is a child trying to do what she can to survive and trying to have things make sense. And he is like a, slow in the uptake, limited adult that's not trying to take advantage of her, all that kind of stuff. Then I find out that there's several scenes cut in the movie where there's implications that that they exchange kisses and that they shared a bed. In the original draft of the movie, Besson intended the two characters to have a sexual relationship. And then I found out that Luc Besson got married to his second wife when she was 16, and she was third trimester pregnant with his child, and they started dating publicly when she was 15. And that in an interview, he said he based Matilda and Leon's relationship on this relationship. And then in 2018, as Me Too swept through the French film industry, he ended up racking up 9 accusations by women, 3 of rape, 6 of sexual harassment, and at least 1 case of someone, him trying to blackmail a person for sexual favors. And it's kind of changed how I feel about the film, Jim. I think it's that original interpretation is still there, but now it's known that it's that happened despite the director's original will and intent. What do we do? What do we do with that information?
Can I throw some more another wrinkle into this thing? By saying that the age of consent in France is 15, and this there are cultural differences here.
Sure. They drink over there, I hear.
They do.
16-year-olds drink wine at the table.
As an American, I'm not necessarily going to defend this and say that if it's legal, it's fine. There are a lot of things that are legal that shouldn't be, and illegal that shouldn't be as well. Does that throw any more doubt into the air? Does this cloud the picture even more?
I mean, I did research into this girl he married, and she seems like she's had a successful professional career as an actor and a director. I wouldn't describe her as a damaged person, but this is cultural high risk behavior, to say the very least. If you want to say there's I don't know. If you want to, I don't know what to do with this information, because it's not a world that I want where people, I think that they also met on a set. And the other thing is he divorced her 7 years later to marry Mia Jovovich, which was 21 at the time, and he was in his 40s. I don't know, it's that's nothing. There's nothing illegal or wrong in that behavior. It's just I don't know,
I don't know what the answer is here. Personally, to me, it feels squicky. I don't think of a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old as being emotionally mature enough to understand a lot of the things that they might be consenting to, even if they're legally allowed to consent. That's just my personal feeling on it, setting aside laws. Yeah,
I think it also says something about the person who wants to romanticize that relationship too. Maybe you can make it work out, and it doesn't necessarily is an abusive, exploitative thing on its face. In individual cases, maybe you can point to once in a 10,000 thing, but
do I trust a 15-year-old girl more with a horny 15-year-old teenage boy, or do I trust her more with a emotionally mature 30-plus-year-old man? It depends on the person, right? Entirely. And
and I guess like the real question is which relationship is the healthy, non-damaging thing on average for the 15-year-old girl to engage
on
in?
average, yeah, I think
I would guess it's like, fumbling around with another 15-year-old,
yes.
not being groomed and pursued by a wealthy 30-plus-year-old. But
yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
About it too.
And then, like I said, like, and you take this back into the Leon movie, and it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, like, it seems like a creepy guy accidentally made just this movie that walks a razor's edge of what's acceptable in society.
I guess I'm glad we got the version we did.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I used to. I'm actually kind of surprised I haven't seen I watched a couple of the deleted scenes on YouTube because I'm like, oh, and I started researching this on my eyebrows kept on raising and going up and up and up, and I'm like, let me see a couple of these, and I was like, oh yeah, it's very clear to me. It's like which version of the movie probably decides how you feel about the movie itself. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Like I said, it's like I felt like it would be an incomplete review if we did not talk about the. His personal life in conjunction to what he's putting up on the screen here. So,
and I didn't know
any other thoughts?
There are a couple of like smaller touches. Like there's one moment where she's filling out the paperwork for the hotel, and she gives the name of someone she hates at school or whatever, and we find out later in the movie that the name of that person is MacGuffin, which I thought was interesting. The last name. I don't know if I don't. Does that serve to just move the plot forward? I can't remember exactly in the context with the way they use that, but I don't think it was literally meant to be, oh, this person is a MacGuffin. I think it was just it's almost a like, nod to Hollywood.
Yeah, he could have called him Key Grip or something, and it would have been. I think it's more of that kind of reference than because you're right. There was nothing. She's not a MacGuffin. Leon's not a MacGuffin. The hotel they're signing into is not a MacGuffin.
Nope.
They're not even. There's nothing. Like the closest thing to MacGuffin in the whole fucking film is the plant, maybe. Because it's just Leon's human connection essentially.
Mm-hmm.
His surrogate for relationships in the movie.
Yeah.
But even then, doesn't really fit quite right.
And then I was kind of surprised by the lack of response when a building is getting shot up. There's one scene where there are at least two shootouts in two separate buildings, full presumably of people, both in an apartment building and then in the DEA government building, where there's just a shootout and nobody's coming out of their apartment to see what's going on. Nobody's running for the exits. There's one old lady who comes out and is like, what's going on?
For a comedic effect, yeah.
Yeah, and they shoot past her head, and then that's kind of the end of it. And stylistically, that's fine. Like, you don't necessarily need to show all that. I was just surprised that they didn't do anything with the people in the buildings.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a budget thing. Like, they didn't have the extras for people running around and screaming, or
could be.
They didn't want to muddy the waters of Leon being a professional. No women, no children.
No collateral damage.
People running wild, getting collateral damage. Like keep it like morally kind of black and white, and who the villains and although the movie it's not really because like he's like I said, it turns out I think if you connect all the dots, it turns out that like he's been doing Gary Oldman's dirty work for him. So whatever you feel about Gary Oldman's role in society, you should feel about Leon.
Yeah. The other person who we didn't really talk about is Danny Aiello, who plays Tony in this movie, and he's a mid-level mob boss. I can't tell where exactly he fits in the criminal organization.
Not fat Tony, not skinny Tony, just medium-sized Tony.
Just Tony.
Just Tony.
He everybody in this kind of plays this razor's edge of a character. He plays a razor's edge of whether or not he's a good guy or a bad guy, an antagonist or a protagonist, a friend to Leon. And I think he does that so well because there's a lot of baggage that comes along with, sitting at a red and white checkered table in Little Italy, right? And speaking with that New York accent. And looking like Danny Aiello does. Like, he plays it just on the edge where I could believe that if if Leon asked Tony for all of his money, there might be money there for him. I'm not sure if this guy is quite like a father figure to him, or if he's a guy who's just leeching him for everything he's worth.
I don't know. It might be a guy who, like, it's funny because like I come down on it after seeing it again that this is a bluff. Like that scene, like it, like you sure, yeah, you just ask for your money. I got your money. I can do that. But hey, and then it's like then once he says that, he then likes Leon's like, oh no, I didn't mean to, I didn't, and he comes like, oh you don't spend much money, you should get some splashing around money, kid. Here's a like I really think that it would be kind of like It's a Wonderful Life situation to be a run on the bank if he goes, Tony, I speak with a Frenchman's accent even though I'm a young Italian man and
Right.
I need my money, Tony. I think that Tony would just be like, fuck, I don't, or he'd play a whole bunch of funny numbers games with like, well, 5,000 a head, you kid,
With
and then
interest
he's gonna
and-
know. Yeah, he's gonna like, and that he wouldn't have it. And I think it's like, now, does Tony have love for Leon? I think he does, and I think that's like, if you want to make an argument that Luc Besson has authentic love for his child brides, like I think it's there for sure. But it doesn't change the nature that there's an exploitative, whether either party is fully aware of it, but I doesn't think it changes the math at the end of the day that like a neutral person beaming down his planet, looking at the power imbalances and like, this is a bad deal.
The movie does a really good job of spooling that out throughout the thing, because it is like inviting me to question that relationship. Like when I first see Leon, like I mentioned, he's not living in a swanky pad or anything, right? He's living in a shithole. He's got no possessions. And then we find out that this guy's keeping his money for him. And I'm like, okay, well, that explains where all of the money that he should have has gone. But what is this guy's relationship? And then he gives him $1,000 and sends him on his way. And we find out, that he's an immigrant who, has like been taken under this guy's wing, and there is sort of a father or at least like protector role there as well. And that Leon might be a little bit simple in like the Forrest Gump kind of way. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of question marks around that I think the movie is actively drawing for you. By the end, I think with this, especially the stuff with Matilda, the movie is saying something about that relationship that's more exploitative than it is fatherly or protectorly.
Sure.
So I think I come down with you on that side of like, he's being exploited more than he is protected.
Yeah. And, Leon probably needed quite a bit of protection back when he was young. And it's probably easy for Tony to justify those feelings and those behaviors. I
just like
everything that happens.
That subtle performance from Danny Aiello, I think is needed for you to walk that line through this movie.
Sure. I think that'll do it for our coverage of Leon the Professional. Yeah, it's like I said, it's cult classic action movie. It still holds up in that way. It's kind of creaky in others, and your mileage is definitely going to vary based on how
the
you
age
feel
of consent laws in your country.
Age of consent laws in your country, and where you stand versus ethics, morality, and intersectional legality. So that is our coverage for Leon the Professional. Next week, we're going to be back with another Bald Move prestigious film as we cover the 25th anniversary of Leaving Las Vegas, a very dark, depressing tale that stars two of my favorite people, Elizabeth Shue and Nicolas Cage. Won an Oscar for that. He's done a lot. He's done a lot of work all over the place. He's had a Gary Oldman type career. You say he won an Oscar? I actually didn't know if he got nominated or he actually won for that one.
I think he won.
Yeah, 25th anniversary. We're going to have a full accounting. If any of those information is wrong, we will get it corrected before the podcast. We're going to be talking about that next week, Leaving Las Vegas, 25th anniversary. If that sounds like a good idea, sounds like a good time, we'll see you there this next week. And if not, wait, we'll have another one the week after. Mm-hmm. Until then, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
See ya.